let's jump right in. Today, we're unpacking a massive paradigm shift in how we interact with powerful AI agents like Claude Code. For the longest time, Markdown has been our go-to language. I mean, it makes sense, right? It's super simple, it's highly portable. But as these AI models get ridiculously capable, stubbornly sticking to flat Markdown is actually turning into a huge bottleneck. So in this explainer, we're looking at a radical pivot, why Markdown is holding you back, and the frankly unreasonable effectiveness of upgrading your entire AI workflow to HTML. Okay, let's quickly run through our roadmap for this explainer. We've got 5 sections today. First, the limits of Markdown. Second, the HTML revelation. Third, powerful use cases. Fourth, custom interfaces. And finally, Section 5, addressing common questions. Let's get to it. Section 1, the limits of Markdown. Let's be real for a second and look at the current standard. Markdown is great for simple things, but when agents like Claude start doing serious, complex heavy lifting, that simplicity hits a brick wall. Sure, it can handle basic tables or those clunky static ASCII diagrams, but let's be honest with ourselves. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is actually reading a 100-line Markdown spec. It just turns into this unreadable wall of text that your entire team is going to completely ignore. Now flip that and think about HTML. We are talking about a rich canvas, fully interactive UIs, stunning SVG illustrations, draggable cards, and completely mobile responsive layouts. The source material really nails the sheer absurdity of how we work right now. Because we artificially lock the AI inside this Markdown box, it ends up trying to do complex visual tasks in the most incredibly inefficient ways possible. It's out here drawing wonky ASCII flowcharts or, hilariously, trying to estimate colors using Unicode characters. It's literally like hiring a master architect and forcing them to build a skyscraper out of Legos. Why make the AI struggle with Unicode when it could just effortlessly spin up a native functional visual interface? Section 2, the HTML revelation. The mental shift we have to make here is absolutely crucial. We've got to stop thinking about HTML as just web coding and start looking at it as a high-density, interactive communication canvas between you and the AI. Think about it. There is almost no set of information Claude can output that can't be beautifully and efficiently represented in HTML. We're talking complex tabular data, gorgeous CSS styling, scalable SVG graphics, syntax-highlighted code snippets, JavaScript interactions, even spatial data. It takes a dead flat text file and transforms it into a multi-dimensional workspace. And the best part? It doesn't just look pretty. HTML gives you genuine two-way interaction. Because it runs JavaScript, you can literally tell Claude to build sliders and knobs right into the document. Say you want to tweak an animation's timing or adjust a specific design element? Just drag the slider Claude built for you, find the perfect setting visually, and copy those exact parameters straight back into your prompt. The communication flows both ways. Section 3, powerful HTML use cases. So let's move from the theory to the actual hands-on stuff and see how this builds. Grouping these real-world examples into actionable workflows will completely change your day-to-day. Let's start with planning. Instead of asking Claude for some boring bulleted list, you can ask it to brainstorm 6 entirely distinct layout approaches and render them for you in a visual HTML grid. You visually compare them, pick the winner, tell Claude to expand that specific one with mockups, and finally generate a digestible implementation plan. You're turning abstract, fuzzy planning into a highly tangible visual workflow. And oh man, for code reviews, this is a total game changer. We all know standard Markdown diffs can be a massive headache to read. But with HTML, you can have Claude generate a dedicated, standalone code explainer. It'll render the actual diffs, drop inline annotations right there in the margins, color code its findings based on how severe they are, and even spin up flowcharts to explain complex logic like streaming or back pressure. Suddenly, reviewing a massive pull request goes from a nightmare chore to a guided, highly visual experience. Another amazing use case is interactive reporting. Claude Code can ingest crazy amounts of context from your file system, your Slack channels, or your Git history. Let's say you're a new dev and you just don't understand how your company's rate limiter works. You can have Claude search the entire code base and spit out a single HTML explainer page. It can literally draw an SVG token bucket flow diagram right next to the annotated code snippets. It synthesizes all that scattered, messy data into one gorgeous, readable research report. Section 4, building custom interfaces.
Now, this is where things get really wild. We are talking about leveraging HTML so Claude can build throwaway, single-use UI editors for data that is just way too painful to manage in a plain text box. Imagine you have to prioritize 30 different linear tickets. You just ask Claude to generate a local HTML file with draggable now, next, and later cards. Or maybe you're dealing with complex config files. Claude can whip up a form-based feature flag editor that actually gives you visual warnings about dependencies. These are bespoke, fully functional mini-apps, and they're generated in seconds.
But here is the secret sauce to making these custom interfaces actually useful, captured perfectly in this quote. The trick is always to end with an export, a copy as JSON or copy as prompt button. That right there is the magic key, because a custom interface is totally useless if your beautifully sorted data is trapped inside it. By explicitly telling Claude to build an export button into the UI, you easily grab that adjusted data and route it right back into Claude Code, completely closing that interactive loop.
Section 5. Addressing common questions.
I know exactly what you're thinking right now. You're probably a highly technical user, and your inner skeptic is sounding alarms about system resources. So let's tackle the biggest, most obvious question head-on. Isn't generating all this rich, complex HTML way less token efficient? And doesn't it take significantly longer to generate than just spitting out simple Markdown? The honest answer, yes, it absolutely does. Generating HTML can take 2 to 4 times longer. But here is why that trade-off is a no-brainer. We are now working with massive 1 million token context windows in models like Opus 4.7. Because of that sheer scale, the increased token usage is virtually unnoticeable. And frankly, the quality, the expressiveness, and the fact that you will actually enjoy reading the document makes waiting an extra few seconds completely worth it. Okay, what about the operational side of things? The next 2 major concerns are usually, what about version control, and how on earth do you stop the AI from generating really ugly, default, early 2000s HTML styling that totally clashes with your company's brand? So straight up, version control is the biggest downside to this whole approach. HTML diffs are notoriously noisy and way harder to review in Git compared to clean Markdown. But for that styling issue, there is a completely brilliant workaround. You just point Claude to your existing codebase and ask it to create a single design system reference file. Once you do that, every single HTML artifact it creates from then on will perfectly match your company's aesthetic. All right, so with all these massive benefits on the table, the final practical question is, how do I actually start doing this today? Do I need to go install some crazy plugin or learn a complex new framework? Not at all. And this brings us to the real Trojan horse hook of this entire workflow. You don't need any complex setup whatsoever. You literally just tweak your prompt. Instead of asking Claude to write a plan, you simply type make an HTML file or make an HTML artifact. That is the whole trick. That one tiny little change in your phrasing is all it takes to unlock this incredibly rich, interactive visual canvas. Which brings us to the ultimate philosophical takeaway from the source material. The author notes, the real reason I use HTML is that I feel much more in the loop with Claude. Think about it. When you stop reading flat text files because they're just too long and boring, you inevitably start blindly trusting the AI's decisions. But HTML forces you back into the collaboration. It makes working with the AI joyful, it makes it visual, and it keeps you deeply, deeply engaged in the actual process. So the choice is really up to you. Are you going to keep scrolling through endless, unreadable walls of Markdown? Or are you ready to completely elevate your workflow? Next time you sit down to prompt Claude, just add those 4 simple words, make an HTML file. Try it out for yourself and watch how it completely transforms your relationship with AI. But I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought. If AI can instantly generate these custom, highly functional, disposable interfaces for our daily tasks right now, what exactly happens to all the software we're currently paying for tomorrow?